morning. Thank you so much for the warm welcome and this opportunity to worship with you all. It always fills my heart and my soul in deep ways to come back to the States and realize that, oh yes, people have been thinking and praying and supporting me in so many ways, and to be able to worship and share in this moment together is very special. So thank you all for this warm welcome and invitation. I'm going to share a little bit this morning about life and ministry in Bogota, Colombia. I'll share about 3 different aspects of my ministry. In the way I think about the ministry in Colombia, it's divided into 3 different aspects. And during the second aspect, I'm actually going to also share a little video with you all. It will be in Spanish, but it's subtitled in English. So, if that sounds good to you, I'll go ahead and get started. So I have been living in Colombia for over 3 years now. It's hard to believe that I left before everything kind of shut down and the pandemic hit and life was turned upside down. But God has been so faithful during these past 3 years, and God has been at work. God is moving, and it has been wonderful to be able to witness the ways in which God is working and moving. So I live in Bogota, Colombia, a big, big city, 3.5, 4 times the size of Chicago. So it's very, very big. It's been different than we originally thought. But as I said, it has been good, and God has been faithful through it all. The first aspect of ministry that I wanted to share with you all this morning, the local church that I'm a part of, called Teusaquillo Mennonite Church, has a variety of different social projects that they're involved in. And one of the ones that actually started because of the pandemic and because of social realities in Colombia, but also in neighboring countries like Venezuela and Ecuador, we started a Venezuelan migrant project. Started out with packaging food and offering a listening ear to many of the Venezuelan migrants that were coming to Colombia. But during the pandemic, there was a shortage of work and of food, and so to kind of meet that need, the Mennonite Church in Colombia decided to offer bags of food on a weekly basis for these families that were showing up at the church with the clothes on their back and nothing else. And so we did that for about 1.5 years. And then as the project grew and the needs grew, we expanded to offer, we call it psychosocial accompaniment. It basically means offering a weekly discipleship course for Venezuelans as well as other Colombians and other migrants that find themselves in the city that would like some more spiritual support. So it's expanded in that way. We also have provided kind of like a tutoring or after-school program for kids. A lot of kids who come don't have the education that they need to be able to enroll in the Colombian school system. So along with 2 other teachers at the church, we kind of provide a tutoring class for them, and I take care of the children who aren't ready to be reading or writing yet, 0 to 2-year-olds. I watch them, and we have appropriate games for them to play. And so it's really expanded into this quite large project that is supported by the Mission Network and MCC, Mennonite Central Committee. And we do weekly interviews, and also we continue to give food because that is still a very big need. We can talk later about the economic situation in Colombia, but just like here, inflation is on the rise. Things are very expensive, and people need to be able to find their daily bread, right? And so, we've tried to be contextually aware and change and shift as things change and shift in the context as well, but remain true to offering a safe place for migrants and their families to come and find shelter in the midst of a huge city. And one other way that the ministry has evolved, which I am more directly involved in, is a women's ministry. So as we've been accompanying many families over the past 3 years, we've realized that there is a very specific need for women to come together and share and pray and encourage each other. So along with one other leader at the church, last October, so not that long ago, we started a women's ministry. So once a month on Wednesdays, this other woman, Teresa is her name, and I make our way to the Mennonite Center, which is where the local Mennonite church is. And we just provide a space for women to be women together. The goal of the space is to read a story from the Bible, a story based on a woman, of course, and to talk about what happens in that story, what the women do in the story, or what the woman does in the story, and how we can apply that to our lives today and gain encouragement from a biblical story that might seem to not have any meaning, but when read in community and together, especially as women, comes to life in a new and interesting way. And it has been such an incredible blessing to be able to walk alongside of these women. Many of the women have been a part of the program for at least a year. There's a lot of turnover because migrant families usually stay in one place for a short time and then move on to continue to try and find better resources, better life. But a lot of them have stayed and found ways in which they can support themselves and their family in Bogota, in the big city. And so these women continue, even though they aren't necessarily receiving the immediate needs like food, because they can now buy their own food, they continue to come to these discipleship and women's spaces, and to be able to get to know them and to hear their stories and to walk alongside of them is really a blessing. So another aspect of ministry is I started accompanying or walking alongside of the Mennonite peace building organization called Justa Paz, or Just Peace, drawn on the word shalom. And I want to show a short video of what Justa Paz does, who they are, how they fit into the ministries of the Mennonite Church in Colombia. So I'm going to show it, and it is in Spanish, but the subtitles are in English, and they do go fast. So if there are any questions afterwards, we can talk, and I can clarify anything. So.
Justa Paz es una organización de la Iglesia Cristiana Menonita de Colombia que actúa en seguimiento a Jesucristo desde la identidad anabautista, con personas, iglesias y organizaciones sociales que buscan el ejercicio de una ciudadanía activa y el vivir en plenitud sus derechos, aportando desde su ser y quehacer en la construcción de una sociedad justa, no violenta y en paz. Ha desarrollado una amplia trayectoria a nivel local, regional, nacional e internacional junto con iglesias, organizaciones socioeclesiales e instituciones, en procesos de capacitación, organización y acción para la construcción de estilos de vida que conduzcan a la paz justa y sostenible. Durante los últimos 28 años, Justa Paz ha logrado posicionar la voz de las iglesias en espacios de incidencia y toma de decisiones fundamentales para mejorar las condiciones de vida de comunidades que han vivido en medio del conflicto armado y social en Colombia durante más de 50 años.
Para mí escuchar Justa Paz, eso me hace sentir grande, me hace sentir orgullosa, porque Justa Paz es una institución de la Iglesia Menonita, en primer lugar, y en segundo lugar por toda su labor que hace y por todo el acompañamiento que nos ha dado a nosotros.
Ha sido mucha bendición que Justa Paz desarrolle sus actividades acá en nuestra región.
Ha trabajado en fortalecer las capacidades de las iglesias, comunidades y organizaciones socioeclesiales como sujetos políticos, para ampliar su participación en plataformas y espacios de interlocución formales y alternativos, así como el reconocimiento de sus iniciativas, agendas territoriales y prácticas propias de construcción de paz.
Justa Paz nos parece muy pertinente para este periodo de proceso y construcción de paz, porque ha permitido reflexionar sobre el papel de las comunidades en torno a la información.
Cuando nosotros hemos sido víctimas del conflicto, directos o indirectos, siempre queremos una paz más justa. Y siempre pensamos como en la esperanza, justa paz.
Menonitas, juiciosos y regiones. Creo que esas tres cosas podría identificar a Justa Paz. Han sacado la academia a los territorios. Ellos realmente han motivado a la facultad y a escenario a desplazarse a los territorios para compartir el conocimiento.
Asimismo, ha desarrollado de la mano de organizaciones socioeclesiales y juveniles estrategias para promover la no violencia activa, la prevención del uso y reclutamiento de niños, niñas y jóvenes en sus territorios en escenarios multiactor, consolidando una estrategia sociojurídica y de incidencia que busca posicionar la objeción de conciencia a la prestación del servicio militar obligatorio como una apuesta hacia la construcción de paz en Colombia.
Justa Paz pues da muchísimo apoyo a jóvenes que aún no tienen conocimiento de qué es ser objetor de conciencia. Justa Paz es un gran apoyo para aquellos jóvenes que quieren, que por causas de filosofía o religión, no van a portar armas y no van a ser parte de un proceso militarista.
También ha promovido espacios de fortalecimiento de capacidades en enfoque de perspectiva de género desde una base bíblico-teológica que potencie escenarios de promoción y exigibilidad de derechos en el marco de la Resolución 1325 y complementarias, ello desde un enfoque de construcción de paz.
Justa Paz ha sido una entidad que nos ha aportado mucho como mujeres emprendedoras, mujeres que queremos luchar, que queremos avanzar, seguir hacia adelante.
Hay líderes en potencia, mujeres que han sido transformadas, que están empoderadas, que un poco son liderazgos escondidos, que a través de todas estas convocatorias, todas las herramientas que nos ha facilitado Justa Paz y todo el apoyo que nos ha dado
Justa Paz, donde hemos tenido varios talleres de fortalecimiento y también estamos aportando a la paz de manera con trabajos en comunidad.
Justa Paz con nosotros, el Bajo Cauca, ha hecho un papel muy importante, nos ha apoyado como mujeres para podernos empoderar. A través de sus capacitaciones, su apoyo, hemos sido mujeres que nos hemos apropiado de la región.
Además, ha trabajado en fortalecer procesos de construcción de memoria histórica, defensa de los derechos humanos y acceso a la verdad, la justicia y la reparación de personas, comunidades y organizaciones socioeclesiales víctimas del conflicto armado o de violencia sociopolítica en Colombia.
Justa Paz ha sido una de las partes importantes y sobresalientes para nosotros en todo este proceso de defensa de tierra y territorio. Y ha sido un acompañamiento muy eficaz porque tienen una forma de visibilización, o sea, en incidencia política muy fuerte.
Quiero agradecerle a Justa Paz por todo el apoyo que nos ha dado en el proceso, jurídicamente, espiritualmente, y que nos hemos sentido agradecidos con Justa Paz por el apoyo que nos ha dado.
Justa Paz es la institución que nos ha estado acompañando aquí en todo el proceso Gartal. Para nosotros como comunidad es de gran garantía que Justa Paz haga este acompañamiento.
Nosotros no sabíamos qué eran los derechos humanos, no sabíamos qué era defender nuestros derechos. Y Justa Paz nos ayudó. El trabajo de Justa Paz es una labor bonita, tanto que hoy en este río Magdalena está Justa Paz con nosotros.
Justa Paz ha potenciado su quehacer desde una perspectiva política, ética y de sostenibilidad integral para fortalecer la institución desde lo administrativo y financiero. Asimismo, ha desarrollado un trabajo articulado con organizaciones sociales, colectivos de jóvenes, universidades y emisoras, desarrollando una estrategia de comunicación para la paz, promoviendo escenarios de diálogo regional y periodismo ciudadano que permitan visibilizar cómo se está construyendo desde los territorios colombianos una cultura de paz y reconciliación.
Justa Paz también ha sido una organización muy generosa, porque precisamente en esta coalición ellos vienen jalonando muchos procesos, ellos vienen integrando muchas organizaciones, entre esas Aviva la Ciudadanía, y vienen destacando esas iniciativas de comunicación a nivel regional.
Hemos visto a Justa Paz como una organización líder.
Justa Paz siempre ha estado ahí y a incentivarnos en la labor de comunicar para la paz.
Justa Paz ha sido el líder de esta alianza y ha sido ese centro que unió a las distintas organizaciones a su alrededor.
Desde la fe y en esta esta labor por la construcción de una Colombia más justa y en paz, Justa Paz es y seguirá siendo testigo de la esperanza y la reconciliación, siendo constructores de paz desde la transformación comunitaria.
All right, thanks for taking the time to watch that. I know it's a little bit fast and the translation could use some work, but it kind of gives you an idea of what Justa Paz does and what the Mennonite Church has been involved in for more than 30 years now. So as many of you know, Colombia has had and continues to have an internal armed conflict. And even though there was a peace accord signed in 2016, the face of the conflict and the different actors that are involved in said conflict continue to morph and change. And so because of this, specifically the Mennonite Church has seen its role as being a prophetic voice, as saying this is not what God desires in God's peaceable kingdom. People are not being displaced from their land. People's farms are not being taken away from them. People are not being killed. Youth are not being kidnapped. And so in this framework, Justa Paz and various other Mennonite churches around Colombia and other denominations as well, rise up and say, we are not going to just stand by in the face of injustice and turn a blind eye and say this isn't happening. No, we're going to be an active agent of change in our community and work towards something different. And so that's kind of the big framework of Justa Paz. And the specific area that I have been walking alongside of is called Mujer y Paz, or Women and Peace. And it looks specifically at the role of women of faith, in their local communities, in their congregations, as taking a role in bringing that transformation, bringing that peace where there is violence and conflict. And there are 3 of us that work in the area, but we have various churches, both Mennonite and other they're called evangelical churches, but basically just Protestant churches, that have said yes to this idea that looking at the role of women in these processes is very important. And so we travel to various territories or departments in Colombia to walk alongside these women who are, with their bodies, basically protesting and denouncing the violence that they are experiencing. And so this has been the most recent part of the ministry that has developed in a way that we didn't really expect, or at least I didn't expect. And it has been an honor to be invited into this organization, into this church ministry, and find a place and find a role along with local Colombian leaders. So I see my role as mostly accompanying. I wouldn't say that I am leading by any means or any stretch of the imagination, but it is accompaniment. And especially as an organization located in Bogotá, which is kind of the central hub, both politically and economically speaking, it's very important to have an awareness that we're actually taking the leadership or following the leadership of the women in various territories and not imposing our own frameworks or projects on them. So that's a little bit about Justa Paz. Oops. Sorry. And yeah, we can talk more about that, specifically what that looks like on a day-to-day basis, but I'm just giving main frameworks for the ministry in Colombia. The last part of the ministry that I'd like to share with you all this morning is something that I've called bridge building. Maybe I could find better language to talk about it, but there are various organizations or various church-related organizations, but also house churches that are interested in developing an Anabaptist identity or understanding what it means to be an Anabaptist, especially from a theological perspective. And so one of the ways that I was able to accompany one of these church networks was last year through a connection that was made during the pandemic. And this network of churches, it's about 5 or 6 house churches that come together once or twice a month to to eat, to share, and to read the Bible together. They're called Ciudad Corazon, or Heart of the City. And their idea is to go back to an Acts-like church, not having a temple, but rather meeting in their houses and sharing together in life and the joys and struggles that arise. And as part of this network of churches, each year they have something that's called Crisálida, or Chrysalis, which is a month-long set of workshops and a 4-day retreat in the middle of the month-long workshops that look at a specific theme. So last year the theme was faith-based peace building, and how local churches and people of faith can be agents of change in society. They really wanted to talk about, okay, what are the practical tools that we can develop as congregations to be able to work for peace in this city. And they really wanted it to be from an Anabaptist perspective, an Anabaptist Mennonite perspective. So I was able to bring together a variety of Colombian Mennonite leaders to give workshop presentations to this community of churches, to talk about, okay, what is conflict transformation? What is nonviolent communication? How can we think about justice and peace work from a theological perspective? And what is the importance of a historical memory, or memory in general, in the midst of our realities, in the midst of a country that has experienced armed conflict and is working towards a different reality, or a post-accord reality. And so, yeah, we were able to bring in 4 different Mennonite leaders from various churches in Bogota to offer these workshops. And then we also had a 4-day retreat in the middle of this month-long series of workshops. And much to my surprise, I was asked to lead the retreat. And so we took a more in-depth look at, okay, what are the practical tools in conflict transformation, in nonviolent communication, in justice and peace work that we can kind of hone in and develop as we take an in-depth look at these themes that we've been talking about for the past 3 weeks. And it was all in Spanish, and it was a big challenge for me, but it was also beautiful to see us come together and be able to talk about, okay, what does it mean to mediate in a situation in our family, but also what does it mean to mediate in a more in a work setting, or in between a victim and a perpetrator? What would that look like? And so, yeah, it was an amazing experience, and I'm very thankful for it. And the last activity that we did is we looked at the Truth Commission's report. So part of the 2016 Peace Accord was the creation of a Truth Commission on a state level. This was state mandated. The Truth Commission was put together to basically uncover what happened during the 50-plus year armed conflict, and it's a massive report, but this community read it, the entire thing, and that to me, first of all, was incredible, because no one even at Justa Paz had done that. But this community said, no, we're going to read it, and they did, and they, at the end of the report, there's a call to churches, a very specific call to churches, all churches, not specific denominations, but all churches, including the Catholic Church, basically saying, okay, what are you going to do? We have seen through this report that churches have been both implicit in the conflict and silent, not all, but some. And so churches, what are you going to do with that reality, and how are you going to commit to making sure this doesn't happen again? And at the end of the retreat, this community decided to write a letter in response to the Truth Commission saying, we as a people of faith, we as a community of faith, commit to non-repetition, to not letting this happen again. We commit to raising our voice. We commit to seeing how we have been complicit in the violence and how we have not taken a stand against it. And we offer they have a foundation where they gather sometimes as a community of faith. They said that they would offer that space as a place for encounters between people who are still trying to find reconciliation. And so it was just this amazing and beautiful picture of this community of faith having a lot of interest in Anabaptist ways of being and knowing, taking a look at their context, being very contextually aware, and also saying, as a community of faith, we commit to a different way. We commit to peace. We commit to the way of Jesus. And here's how we're going to do that. So it'll be interesting to see how this part of the ministry develops. But I just wanted to share that because it's a very encouraging story to me. And so I hope it can also be encouraging to you all. And here are just some pictures. I hope you can see them. If not, we can share the presentation with you all afterwards. But as you can see, food is a very important part of Colombian culture. We gather around food with the committee. So these pictures here are the committee at the church with the Venezuelan Migrant Project. So we try to eat together potluck style once a month to just share and talk about what we've been hearing and learning. There's a group of young people that we've kind of started meeting together every Thursday night in my home or other people's homes just to share food together, pray together, read the Bible, and encourage each other in our walks and in our lives. And then this picture over here, there was also food involved, but something else that I've really loved about the Colombian culture and what I've been able to do there is the importance of ritual. So in 2020, Justa Paz celebrated its 30-year anniversary, 30 years of work. We weren't able to celebrate until 2022 because of the pandemic. But something that we did at this celebration was we brought in a number of the people from the territories to come to Bogota for the celebration, and each leader, social leader from the territory, brought something that represented their work, something that represented their commitment to peace. And about halfway through the celebration, they were asked to place it on this large map of Colombia that we had on the ground here. And it was this beautiful picture of all of these people from various territories coming together and saying, look, here is a symbol of our commitment to peace and justice in our communities. And we're going to come together and encourage each other and restate our commitment to this walk of peace, which is very difficult sometimes. And yeah, these are also just some pictures of my co-workers at Justa Paz. Justa Paz in some ways does operate as an NGO or a workplace, but it's also rooted in Anabaptist faith and tradition. And so part of that means coming together and eating together and reminding ourselves why we're in this work, and it's not just a 9-to-5 job, but there is a commitment that comes with this. And so yeah, just wanted to show you some of those pictures to kind of bring the ministry to life in maybe a different way. And then to close, I did want to go back to that, if we still have some time. I did want to go back to that verse that I shared with the kids, John 10:10, that the words of Jesus that say, "The thief comes only to kill, steal, and destroy, and I come that they may have life and have it abundantly." As I was saying with the kids, this verse is a central verse to the Colombian Mennonite churches. There are about 25 local Colombian Mennonite churches, and so this has been and still is a central verse, and it kind of provides a basis or a framework for how they see their role and see their place in the world and understand their place in the world. And while it may seem so simple, in Colombia, this is what the gospel means. The gospel is abundant life. I have come that they may have life abundant. And as I was saying with the kids, that means to the Colombian Mennonite Church, that means a life without violence, a life without pain, and a life without injustice. Or in other words, the good news is that God desires everyone to experience this abundant life, not only on a personal level, but also extending out towards the community and into society. And so as I walk alongside of and partner with various local congregations in Colombia, I've come to this newer and deeper understanding of what this concept means, especially with the work that we do in Justa Paz. This notion of abundant life is shared across many churches and congregations, and I have seen this thread woven together throughout the different Colombian territories. Since the gospel is seen as bringing good news to situations of violence and despair, this verse has mobilized and continues to mobilize many local Mennonite churches to see themselves as active agents of change in their faith communities, but also into broader society. The vision that violence, injustice, and poverty are not part of God's heart for shalom or part of this abundant life impacts the local congregation, mobilizing them to work in creative and imaginative ways that impact, influence, and create change in society. And so there's so much more that I would like to share with you, so many stories that would be amazing to have you all know as well. But I think I'll end there, and hopefully after the service during lunch, we can continue the conversation and answer any questions that might have arisen during this time. I guess I could end by some prayer requests that I've been thinking about as I've been on this side and not in Colombia. Maybe I'll share these and then we can end there. So you can continue to pray for healthy relationships in the church and in Justa Paz as an organization. Pray for the various women's ministries that we are involved in, both at the church and in Justa Paz. Pray that the women would feel encouraged and that they would truly believe that they can speak and act. And part of the reality of living in Colombia is that it's a very male-dominated society, and women usually don't have a voice. And so that pray that the women would be able to catch this vision that Jesus shows us in the Gospels of women leading, of women having a voice and having a place and being seen as equal. Pray for that. You can also continue to pray. Well, maybe this hasn't been a prayer request in the past, but the visa process has become very, very difficult. I did not think I was going to get my visa renewed. My visa expired on February 1st of this year, and it was a very long process to get it renewed. I did have to leave and go to Ecuador for a bit because my visa expired and they did not renew it. And there are 2 other missionaries that are also accompanying Justa Paz from Puerto Rico, and they have not received their visas yet. And so you can be praying for that, as it's a very sad, and it's just a space and time of being very confused and not knowing why that's happening and what God wants to teach through it. And then also you can be praying for the next 2 years. So my first commitment with the Mission Network came to an end, and I have been asked by the Colombian Mennonite Church to continue accompanying for at least 2 years. And so you can be praying as I continue in the ministries that I've just shared, and in daily life in Bogota, you can be praying for strength and wisdom and discernment. And I think that is all. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope it made sense.